You are listening to a message from Southwood Presbyterian Church in Huntsville, Alabama. Our passion is to experience and express grace. Join us.
What the Apostle Paul and Taylor Swift have in common. This morning kind of our DTR with the law. Now, some of you know what DTR means. It's one of those words that's like an abbreviation like OMG. Now, you may have seen that in a text before. Somebody says OMG. Kids, what does that mean? Oh my God, oh my gosh, something has happened. Or you get the OMG in the text, or somebody then says, what, LOL, right? That means? Believe me, I've chosen all safe ones, so you don't have to worry we're going anywhere bad, okay? I have teenagers. I know the ones not to put up here, okay? This next one you may not be as familiar with. Best friends for life, like no matter what. I mean, seriously, right? You get that one. Or you might get DTR. Somebody says, what's going on? DTR. That you've found out something's happened. DTR. It means define the relationship. Tell me what's happening. Give me the DTR on that. And so this morning, as we come to this particular text, this particular scripture, what we're going to do is have a DTR with the law. The Apostle Paul is going to define the relationship that Christians have with the law. How does it work? And so we'll look at the text beginning at verse 16 and we'll read through 18. Paul says, "So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They're in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law." Verse 18 is our focus this morning as we try and do a DTR with the law. If you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. What is my relationship? What is your relationship? How do we define the relationship with the law? Paul said it, if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. So indeed, what does that mean? Before we go there, before we DTR with the law, I would suggest we need to remember our DTR with the Spirit. 3 weeks ago, we looked at this. We picked up in verse 16, and we saw that what Paul would say is that when you walk by the Spirit, you won't gratify the desires of the flesh. There's something about our relationship with the Spirit that means you don't give way to the flesh. You don't give in to the flesh. So defining the relationship, hear me, defining the relationship with the Spirit first is important, because living by faith alone, in Christ alone, through grace alone, means that we do not live by flesh alone. We do not gratify the desires of the flesh. This has to be absolutely nailed down in your mind, because we cannot talk about our relationship with the law unless you understand what it means to be in relationship with the Spirit. The accusation goes against grace regularly that grace means you don't love holiness, that grace means you don't love righteousness, that grace means that we don't love piety and purity. But Paul is telling us in verse 16 that the relationship, if you were to define it with the Spirit, it is not one that you live by the flesh alone. So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. DTR with the Spirit means that I do not love unrighteousness. I am not given freedom to indulge in unrighteousness. I am not given freedom to dive headlong into sin. If grace leads to loose living and lazy faith, it's not grace we're talking about. Because the DTR with the Spirit says that I do not live according to the flesh. I don't gratify the flesh. It means that I walk with Him. Walking with Him means I love what He loves and I hate what He hates. Nail that down in your mind. If you're a note taker, that's what you write down. The DTR with the Spirit means I walk with Him. And when I walk with Him, I love what He loves and I hate what He hates. That's it. That's how it works. That's the nature of your relationship and mine with the Holy Spirit, and that's how it happens. Sarah Nemitz, who works with us, was Sarah Denton to me when I met her. She was a college student who worked as an intern for us at our church, and Like all other single college girls who were interns there, she'd often, pine and wax eloquently about what married life would be like for her. She hadn't met Ben yet, but she knew exactly what it was going to be like. She had told me several times the way it was all going to work out. I remember one particular conversation that she and I had. She said, I just can't wait until my husband comes home and it'll be just the perfect dinner. I mean, it will be vegetable night. And I said, Sarah went to Furman, okay? She thought that vegetable night would actually count as dinner for her. Now listen, Ben Nemitz is a contractor. He's a builder. He's a skilled craftsman. He is a hardy human being. He did not go to Furman and learn about vegetable night or anything like that. He is a man's man. Sarah likes things like endame and kashi and safflower oil and wheat germ. And she goes to bed at night dreaming of culinary romantic dinners with nothing but dead plants. And I told her, I said, Sarah, you need to understand something. Unless an animal gives its life for dinner, it is not dinner. And she said, no. She said, just with these stars in her, she goes, no. The man who I marry will love vegetable night. And I said, Sarah, let me tell you something. That will only work if you promise him some kissing and hugging for dessert, if you get my drift. And I said, and that will only work for the first year. And she looked at me like, no, really? Is that true? I said, that is the absolute truth, and you need to know that. And so she went on and on, believing that vegetable night would be dinner. And they've been married for a couple of years now. And I told her over and over again, dead animal equals dinner, not dead plant. That is how you feed your husband. And so I guess it was right toward the end of the last football season, Sarah and Ben had come over for dinner. And we were going to watch a football game or something, and they showed up. And I had just taken a big batch of wings off of the grill. I mean, man food, dead chicken, wings on the grill. And Ben walked in, and I said, Ben, you ready for some wings? He goes, no, man, I already ate. And I said, oh, what'd you eat? And he said, we had tofu spaghetti. And a kind of a tear welled up in my eye. Like I saw my friend just wasting away to nothing. Like, how is this? She's mesmerized by tofu. She'd worn him down like the Judaizers had done to the Galatians. Paul says they are emasculating. That's what happened to Ben. Spaghetti with tofu is what she was serving him. And I was thinking, okay, when she leaves the room, I can counsel him pastorally and, the whole thing. I mean, they have a cat too. Not just a dog, they have a cat and they eat tofu. That's a serious pastoral issue. And I planned on addressing it with Ben when she walked out. But it got worse right then. Because Ben looked at me, he goes, it's really good. I kind of like it. And I went, oh no. He has gone to the dark side. Furman Sarah has convinced him that tofu is really spaghetti. And my first thought was that he was only saying it because she could hear him, that she liked the tofu spaghetti, and he was trying to play it safe. But he looked at me, he goes, no, I really like it. It's really, really good. And I said to him, I now know what true love is. I am staring face to face at true love. I've got my friend who's a contractor eating tofu spaghetti telling me that it's really, really good. A couple of minutes later, I waved a chicken wing right in front of his face. And he ate it, and then I remembered my friend had come back. But seriously, think about it for a second. What would you think if a contractor showed up at your house and he was eating like a bean curd and wheat whey drink? And, he's like, this is really, for my snack mid-morning, I'm going to have a little endame. And I thought, Ben, this is a really serious issue. But Ben, eats that. Now, he still eats the other real food from time to time. But he does that. And I tell you that whole story to tell you one point, and that's this. Sarah told me something before they started dating that I saw come true in Ben. She said, whoever I marry will love what I love because he will love me. Whoever I marry will love what I love because he will love me. even if that meant Ben Nemitz beginning to eat tofu spaghetti in the midst of it. And that's Paul's point to the church in this text. When we walk with him, when we walk with Jesus, it means we begin to love the things that he loves. Even if they aren't naturally in our DNA, we find ourselves loving the things that he loves. Holiness is foreign to us. Piety is foreign to us. It's not our natural appetite. We naturally like sin, right? And we begin to love things that he loves. Things like humility and repentance, giving, putting others before ourselves. Our natural sinful man, when you think about loving your enemies, it looks like kashi, right? Gravel in a box. Like there's no way I could eat that. I couldn't possibly digest loving the neighbor who I cannot stand. I couldn't imagine my appetite being seasoned to the point where I am humbling myself rather than rising up in pride. And Paul says when you walk with Jesus, something happens. Your appetite starts to change. You start, because you're his bride, you start to love things that he loves, things you'd never imagine that you would love. You get a sense of his heart when you're with him, when you're loved by him, when you're walking with him. You like it. Not fingers crossed, wait till she leaves the kitchen like it, but really like it. Like a heart change, kind of like it. And you begin to sense where his heart lies. I teased Ben a lot after that. I consider this to be the ultimate moment of mockery, to use it in a sermon against him. But I teased him a lot. I would regularly ask him if he, like when he'd talk about his cat, I would ask him, have you gotten your man card back yet, Ben? Are you sure with that? And so a lot of joking goes back and forth. But listen, the point is this. When you walk with Jesus, there's something good about losing the man card. Something good about losing the woman card. Something good about losing the human card. The things that we naturally desire, the things we naturally go after, because there's something beautiful about walking with him. If I don't lose myself, I haven't found him. Right? If I don't lose myself, I haven't found him. That's the point of the text when Paul says when we walk by the Spirit, right? We begin to desire what he desires. That's the DTR with the Spirit, loving what he loves and hating what he hates. And so we've got to nail that down in our minds, that the DTR with the Spirit says I love what he loves and I hate what he hates because I love him. That's what it means. And nail that down as solid as you possibly can in your mind, because before we do the DTR with the law, you have to know what it looks like to love the Spirit. Because you can't talk about your relationship with the law until you know that loving him means loving what he loves. Loving holiness, loving righteousness, loving purity. Those things that we don't naturally love because they become our passions because they're his passions. Then you can talk about the law, verse 18. If you are led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. If you're led by the Spirit, that means when you're in relationship with the Spirit, when you're walking with the Spirit, when you're walking with him, when you're in love with him, you are not under the law. The law is not something that rules you. You could read this verse to say, if you walk with him, you're not under the law. If you live by faith, you're not under the law. If you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. So, what is our DTR with the law? Define the relationship with the law. What does it mean to be there? Does it mean we're free to sin? Does it mean that the law doesn't matter? Does it mean that we're free to indulge unrighteousness? Are we free from holiness? Listen to me. It cannot possibly mean that, because the text is telling us if you're led by the Spirit. It's nailing down, it's making sure you look at the wedding ring on your hand and say you're married to Jesus. Now, there's something different about the law. When you're married to Jesus, there's something different about the law. And married to Jesus means you love what he loves. So, not being under the law it cannot possibly mean that we're free to indulge in sin. Loving him can't mean hating the law. He made it. He came up with it. He wrote it. So whatever we determine it means, it can't mean a disdain or disregard for holiness. Sarah said it right. Whoever marries me will love what I love. That's got to be true. And Paul is telling us Whoever marries Jesus will love what he loves. If you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. Now, pay attention, because this is where the context matters. What has the entire book of Galatians taught us thus far? We've been told over and over that the law couldn't do what? It couldn't save us. We've been told over and over that the law couldn't make us holy. We've been told over and over that the law couldn't improve our standing before God. It couldn't make us righteous. It could only do what? Point us to the one who was. It was our mirror. It exposed us for who we are and sent us to Jesus over and over again. The law can't save us. It can't produce holiness. It only points us to the one who can. So the Judaizers, in telling the church to live under the law, to be under the rules to be holy, under the obligation of circumcision to be morally pure, under the law as a means of righteousness, Paul is nailing it down here once and for all. Hear me, this is what he means. When I married Jesus, I broke up with the law. When I married Jesus, I broke up with the law. When my righteousness was given to me in the wedding supper of the Lamb, I broke up with the law as a means of righteousness. It could no longer define me. It no longer had verdict power over me. It couldn't control me, because this tells me who I am. My DTR with the law is that the law no longer defines who I am. I no longer need the law to tell me whether or not I'm acceptable. Jesus says I'm acceptable. I no longer need the law to tell me that I'm beautiful in the sight of God by obeying. The gospel tells me I'm beautiful in the sight of God because of Jesus' obedience. I don't need the verdict of the law to be complete, because the verdict was complete when Jesus says it is finished. Somebody should say amen, because that's what it means to be free from the law as a means of righteousness. When you're married to Jesus, you're free, because he defines you. He's the one who makes you acceptable. He's the one who makes you righteous. He's the one who makes you beautiful and holy. You see, I have a ring on my finger, sandals on my feet. I have the acceptance of the Father. The fattened calf has been slaughtered. I am the bride of Christ, and that is what defines me, not the law. So when I walk by the Spirit, when I'm married to Jesus, I'm not married to the law. We broke up. Because see, I don't need the mirror to tell me that I'm beautiful when Jesus already has. I don't need the mirror to tell me that I'm beautiful when Jesus already has. Wives, I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine your husband getting dressed for work, okay? And he's getting dressed, and we all know that men primp just like women do, and he's primping a little bit, trying to make sure that he looks just right, and you say, honey, you look great, go on to work. And he says, okay, I appreciate that. Will you do something for me? Here, take my iPhone and just take a picture for me. She goes, okay, and so he stands there and kind of gives that, and takes the phone back, and you say, what are you doing with the picture? And he says, listen, I'm going to send it to my ex-wife. I just want to get her opinion. Got real quiet in here all of a sudden, didn't it? That's not even funny as an illustration. I'm going to send it to my ex-girlfriend. Just see what I appreciate the input. But you see me every day. I know you're going to tell me that I look okay. But I'm just going to text this picture of me to her, and when she tells me I'm okay, then I'm okay. Now, let me tell you something. That makes Ndami look digestible compared to that scenario unfolding in life, right? Can you imagine asking the person who was not your beloved to give the verdict about you day after day? The person who did not unconditionally love you to give you the verdict day after day after day? If you use the ex-wife illustration, no offense to the ex-wives, and here are the ex-husbands, it's just an illustration, okay? But can you imagine asking the person who is no longer married to you, the person who'd rejected you, the person who says, I don't want anything else to do with you, asking them if you were acceptable? Yeah, right. You're asking me if you're acceptable? I told you every day we were married you aren't acceptable, and the verdict isn't different now. That is what Paul is saying. If you are led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. When you're married to Jesus, the law doesn't get your picture anymore to decide if you're beautiful, because Jesus has. It doesn't have verdict power over you. You can't take a picture of yourself with the law and send it on to Mount Sinai and say, am I acceptable yet? Jesus has taken you to Calvary and says you're beautiful because of what he has done. If you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law to give you the verdict of okayness. And listen, when you walk with him, you love what he loves. See, we always get afraid if we're going to stop asking our ex-wife if we look beautiful, we'll never care anymore. And Jesus says, if you understand what it means to be my bride, that's the only thing that'll matter. When you married Jesus, you broke up with the law. When you married Jesus, you broke up with the law. When you married Jesus, you broke up with the law. He is the one who loves you. He is the one who defines you. He is the one whose verdict is the only verdict that matters. And Paul said, if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. It's over. It is done. You are mine. You are my beloved. I am the verdict giver. You see, the law can't make you lovable. It's what pointed out your faults, right? It exposes our sin. It shows me over and over again why I shouldn't be loved. And listen, the truth of it is that we are loved by Jesus because of what he has done. Have you ever known someone who is mistreated in a relationship? Who is in a very bad relationship for a very long time? And in God's mercy, they get out of the relationship, but they say things like this. They say, I still hear their voice in the back of my mind. I can't shake it. Everything they told me still stays with me. And somewhere along the way, in the midst of that heartbreaking scenario where someone has been given false verdicts over and over again, they just can't shake, somebody comes along and all their friends get excited. Because why? It's the person who will love them. It's the person who will embrace them, the person who will just absolutely dote over them. And you see that person with the new person and you say, I think they can hear it now. They finally know who they are because they've seen themselves in the eyes of another. That's the point. If you are led by the Spirit, if you're walking with the Father, if you're married to Jesus, the law's picture of you is not the defining picture. It's not what makes you holy. It's not what makes you righteous. You're free from the law as a means of righteousness, as a second opinion of your acceptability, as a barometer of your beauty. If you want to know who you are, if you want to know how you look in the eyes of Jesus, your beloved, not at the picture the law takes of you. If you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Look into his eyes for acceptance and stop looking in the mirror for the same. If you are led by the Spirit, listen to me, if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if his love for you was more true than what that bad photo keeps showing? Because there are things about us that are not beautiful, right? We spend so much time trying to tell people that's not the real us. The truth is the picture shows what we really fail at, where our blemishes really are. But the truth is when we're with him, then we really start to believe that what he says is more true than how we feel or what the photo says. True confession time, I like Taylor Swift. I think Taylor Swift is a profound singer. I think the songs she writes about are amazing. I do think eventually there will be a compilation LP with all the men she's broken up with who write an album called The Real Story about Taylor Swift. I think it'll be entitled It's Her Fault, because she writes all these songs about all the relationships she's had and everything that everyone has done to her. But she's got one that she's done recently where she talks about this ex-boyfriend and the fact that it's never being rekindled. And there's this great stanza in it that you've got to see. She says, ooh, we called it off again last night, but ooh, I'm telling you, we are never, ever, ever getting back together. We are never, ever, ever getting back together. You go talk to your friends, talk to my friends, talk to me, but we are never, ever, ever getting back together. And then the music stops in the song and she goes, like ever. And she just says it. She stops singing it. She just says it. And there's all this speculation about who the song's about. I mean, how'd you like to be the guy that broke up with her before she wrote that song, right? Another failed relationship song by Taylor Swift. We are never, ever, 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 never, ever, 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 top 40, ever, like never getting back together. How do you really feel, Taylor? Really? Is there like a small, like, crack in the door? Ever, never, ever getting back together. Listen, that is the Apostle Paul's description of your relationship with the law. You are never, ever, 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 ever getting back together. Not because you have bailed on the law to nothingness, but because you love Jesus. Because you have been scooped up by the one who will never, ever, 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 ever leave you. Isn't that the point of Romans, right? Nothing in all of creation, life nor death, principalities nor powers, things present nor things to come, things in all creation will ever, never, ever, ever, like ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is ours in Christ Jesus. Jesus' love song to you is, I'm never breaking up with you, never, ever. And so you know what we can say? The law, you have no power over me. Your verdicts do not define me. They are not the thing that's the final thing about me. Jesus is. So if you walk by the Spirit, the Apostle Paul says, you're not under the law. Not under the law as a means of righteousness. So every time the law creeps into your mind and says, this is the real you, Nina Banta, this is the real you, this is really who you are, you tell the law, I broke up with you, I found someone else. I found someone else. Isn't that beautiful? I found someone else. That's Jesus. It's the beauty of the gospel. It's not abandoning the law to nothingness. It's being romanced by Jesus and loved by him instead. He loves you. He accepts you. He rejoices over you. He covered your failures, and he is crazy about you. And so you're not under the law. You see, Jesus came up with it before Sarah did. Whoever marries me will love what I love. Whoever marries me will love what I love. So we begin to love what he loves, free from the law as a defining verdict, free from the law as a means of righteousness, and free to now, listen to me, free to now love the law as a reflection of his holiness. Because guess what? This will preach all day long. Listen to me. When the law took a picture of Jesus, do you know what it was? It was perfect. It was perfect. 360 degrees, a picture of Jesus Christ. He kept the law that was a reflection of his Father. So every time you want to know, does the law need to be fulfilled? The picture that Jesus did is perfect. That's the one you want, not yours, not mine. And you can love it because it looks like what? Listen to me. What does it look like when you look at it? It looks like him. And you love him because why? He first loved you. Beloved, isn't that the better way of Christianity than pimping ourselves up, trying to make ourselves acceptable, trying to ask our Bible study leaders, our elders, our friends, our neighbors, everyone, am I pretty enough? Is this enough? Have I done enough? Is that good enough? And we text the picture to everyone we can possibly know. We'll go on mission trips. We'll do everything and say, is this the right picture? Is this the right picture? And Jesus says, let the picture of me be enough and you be mine. Oh, man, let me tell you, that is so good because it's the beauty of what Christ has done for us. It's a reflection of who he is. The mirror doesn't define me. It sends me back to him over and over again because I'd rather have his picture than mine. Let me illustrate this, and I'll try and apply it, and then we'll come here. will come here to eat and taste and remember and feast again. What if Sarah had started out by saying, I'm only going to love a man. I've got a rule. I'm only going to love a man who loves vegetable night, who loves kashi, who eats endame. I would have said, good luck. You're looking for a rabbit, not a man. I'd say, Sarah, that cannot be the lead question, like, hi, nice to meet you. Do you like endame? No, we're breaking up. I mean, that can't be it. She couldn't have started by saying, this is the criterion by which we determine, I only will love Ben if Ben loves wheat germ. No, she approached it in a totally different way. She said, if Ben loves me, he'll love what I love. If Ben loves me, he'll love what I love because he loves me. My friend Tullian Trevijan said a couple of weeks ago at a conference he held in Fort Lauderdale called Liberate, he said something that it's stuck with me to change me forever. He said, there's an internal voice inside of all of us that says, do this and live. And what we must hear is the external voice that is louder that says, it is finished. There's an internal voice inside of all of us that says, do this and live. Eat this, do this, wear this, be this, and live. But the louder external voice of Jesus says, it is finished. That's the one that defines us. If Sarah only loved Ben, if he loved her food, then her love was conditional. It was corrupted, and it could change based on his behavior or his eating patterns. But if she loved Ben, not for do this and live, but I do forever, then it changed him. Face to face with that kind of affection, Ben knew it was finished, it was done, and guess what happens? Now he's free to love what she loves. That's how the gospel works. That's how it really, really works. Only the gospel frees you and I from the slavery to make our own way, to make ourselves lovely. And it finally lets us love what he loves. To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly before the Lord. Walk by the Spirit and you're not under the law. Walk with the Father and you're not under rules to establish a relationship. Walk with the Father, you're not under the ceremonial law. Walk with the Father, and for the first time in your life, listen to me, walk with the Father, and for the first time in your life, you will feast on things you never thought that a person like you would feast on. You never imagined you would love the poor. You never imagined you could love your enemies. You never imagined you could love your neighbor. You never imagined you would love holiness. And when a guy like me and people like you start feasting on things like that, people start asking, what happened? You know what you tell them? I fell in love with Jesus. And so I love what he loves. Isn't that what Ben would tell his friends? Like, dude, seriously, what happened? I mean, you're eating like a rabbit. You eat these things. What happened? Ben wouldn't tell you about the new dietary rules that were imposed upon him by Sarah. He would tell you what? About Sarah. And that he loves her. So he loves what she loves. That's how it works. That's how it changes us. So what do you and I do? What do we do with a message like this? How do we apply it to our lives? I just suggest two things to you. What happens is stuff from the old relationship gets thrown out and stuff from the new one gets held on to. Stuff from the old relationship gets thrown out and stuff from the new one gets held on to. There's something in you and I that always goes back to the old way of relating. Always thinking if we do this, we'll live. Back over and over again. There's part of life where we're always looking in the mirror to get it right. And we need to know where those things are and let those things die under the shadow of the cross. So here's how you know it. Because I don't think any of us would didactically, like out loud, say, there is a portion of my life I live under the law, under those verdicts, and I have now identified them and I will let them go. No, you want to know where those things are, then simply do this. Ask yourself how you love other people. Because see, we give away what's in our hearts. How do you love other people? What would people who are around you say? Do they feel judged? Do they feel condemned? Do they feel like they're living on the treadmill of trying to get your approval? See, that's not really something that's wrong with them. It's something that's wrong with you and I. We're giving away what we have. We believe when they get it right, we'll love them. It's because we believe the same thing about God with us. When you love with the law, it means you're living by the law. When you love with the law, it means you're living by the law. If you have to always be right, then you're living under the law of correctness. That's why everyone feels condemned around you. If you always have to have the last word, it means you're living by the law of winning. And everyone around you knows that you win all the time. And that's how you get love with you. If you have to spell check everyone else, everything that everyone says, if they say it and you've got to get it accurate all the time, that means you believe you've got to get it right all the time. Listen to me. You and the law are never, ever, never, ever, ever getting back together. And so throw away the old letters, the ones that say do this and live for yourself, and replace them with this one. It is finished. That's how you'll love other people who are failing around you. If everyone around you is worried about being evaluated with the snapshot that you take when report cards come out or when the final buzzer buzzes or when the bank statement comes in, and that's your indicator that you're not walking with Him alone. It's about performance and not about grace. Secondly, and here's the fun part, you throw away the old stuff from the old relationship that you're never, ever getting back together, and then you latch on to the new one. You grab on what it's like to be His bride. Because He's not sending your picture back to Mount Sinai. He's written your name in the palm of your hand, and He'll never let you go. It means loving the things that He loves. Brock Warner told me a story about his sister recently. It's a great story. He said that his sister did some kind of unconventional birthday parties for her children. And I said, what do you mean by unconventional? He said, they would do things like they would bring gifts for other people, like poor people and sick people, to the birthday. Instead of asking for presents for the child, they would ask for presents for other people. And he said he can remember one where they had it in a park outside of a children's hospital that had a cancer ward in it. And so all the children came, and they all arrived at the birthday party, and they all colored pictures and wrote notes, and they took presents. And then at the part of the party when it was supposed to be all about a cake and all about them and all about that, they all went from there into the cancer ward of the children's hospital and gave them gifts and gave them the notes and loved on those kids. And as he told me, I thought, man, that's such great parenting, such a great example for the children. It's such a beautiful picture of what happens when a parent really does it right. And then it clicked that his sister stole the whole idea. Because you see, what happens is when you realize that Jesus has got a hold of you and that He loves you and that He rejoices over you, what happens is you hold on to others. That was his point. If you want to love what He loves, you love other people. You move toward them. Every date with Jesus ends up exactly the same way as that birthday party. Every date with Jesus, every marriage with Jesus ends up the same way. When you ask Jesus, Jesus, what do you want for our anniversary? He says, do you see the sick over there? Do you see the poor? Do you see your neighbors? Do you see the broken? If you want to do something for me, if you want to love me back, don't love me back, love them instead. Give it away. And then guess what? The whole world will know you're mine because you do that. Because nobody does that. Nobody does that. That's what it's like to walk with Him, to love Him, because it changes everything. Listen, we're going to come to this table now, and we're going to eat and remember what it's like to be His. We're going to eat and remember what it's like to have feasted on the gospel. I was out of town at that conference and stopped at the little hotel lobby and got a little ice cream cup, like a little late night snack, a little like $8 2-ounce thing of ice cream because I was too lazy to drive to the store and get it. And as I ate that little thing, it was reminding me as I was working on the sermon of Ben and Sarah's wedding. At the reception, now Sarah's from Texas, so she got to the reception, put on cowboy boots with her wedding dress, and she danced the whole time. And they had an ice cream man come to the reception who had these little frozen custard cups, Harry's frozen custard or something like that. She didn't have a kashi cake because she's a Christian, and didn't have. I mean, it was not like that kind of reception. It was a real reception, like the wedding supper of the Lamb, not the one the devil would do with ndame and vegetables. But it was awesome, and the custard and all the little things. And every time, I'm telling you, every time our family, we were all there at the wedding. Every time we get little bitty ice cream cups and stuff like that, we always talk about like, oh, remember that time at the wedding reception when the ice cream truck showed up at Ben and Sarah's and came in and we all ate the custard and it was awesome. And inevitably, the conversation turns to Sarah in her cowboy boots dancing with Ben at the reception. They're one of the couples that didn't leave the reception early. They danced the whole time. When Sarah married Ben that night, he didn't love tofu spaghetti yet. But he loved her. And see, the thing is, when Jesus found you, when he found me, we didn't love all the things he loved yet, but we loved him. And so when you eat this, you remember that he loved you, and then give it away. Go find someone who doesn't know what they look like, someone for whom all the verdicts have been bad, someone for whom every picture has been one they'd want to delete. And you find them and you say, I know somebody who will love you. I know somebody who will pronounce verdicts over you and dance with you forever. And his name is Jesus. Amen? On the night he was betrayed, Jesus didn't want us to forget. And so he wanted to make sure his friends saw and knew and tasted and would always have that ice cream cup, something that every time it was set in front of them, they would get it and they would see it and they would know. And so he took things that were familiar to them, things he knew that they would see again, not obscure things so they wouldn't have a point of connection, but things they were very familiar with. And there was bread that he broke, and then there was wine that he picked up, and he said, listen, he said, whenever you eat this bread, remember, it's my body. Do it in remembrance of me because it's going to be broken for you. And whenever you drink this cup, when it touches your lips, remember something. My blood was spilled for you. And this is the reason, because you're my bride. And this picture had to be taken of him because this was the picture that you and I deserved. This is the one that you and I wanted deleted. Our bodies broken, our blood shed, us being crushed. And Jesus says, our relationship starts with this one. I'm going to stand in the one spot that you should have stood in and have the Father's wrath poured out on me. And then I'm going to take my photo album with everything I've ever done right, and I'm going to hand it to you and put your name on it. And so when the Father looks at you, he sees me everywhere. Now that's this table that you're going to eat, and you're going to remember that it is finished. He did everything so that you could live.
For more information, visit us online at southwood.org.